and magazines, and I've also been one of the earliest players in the digital world. I hope you're having a useful conference and you have scribbled plenty of fresh thoughts and new ideas into your notepads and smartphones and laptops, because that's the whole idea of this conference, and I hope you've done plenty of that in the last couple of days. So let's get right down to the day's proceedings. We live in a world of surprises, in fact, full of surprises. Just when we thought that the worst of COVID was over and we no longer would have to hunt for Greek words, we are now bang in the middle of a full-blown war in Europe. Just when we thought that the price of crude oil would go through the roof, we've seen a fall, a sharp fall last night. The stock markets are suddenly up. Gold is down to its lowest price in 19 months. So as I said, life is full of surprises. Yet in this uncertain world, there are some certainties: death, taxes, and the innovation in newspapers report. Our first guest today, Juan, is the man behind the innovation in newspapers report. Each year, he stands up in different parts of the world to spread some sunshine about our wonderful business by showing us some of the great things that are happening that we may not be aware of, and showing us some of the great things that we could perhaps adapt and use in this country and in other parts of the world. As a consultant, Juan does all the usual things. He advises clients, he directs projects, he sits on boards, and he speaks to the media and speaks to journalists across the world. But there's a key difference. He does all this with a sense of hope and optimism that our industry is in dire need of. So may I now call upon Juan to provide us our annual installment of Sunshine at Digital Media India 2022. And while he speaks, may I request you all to make some notes and post your questions, even while you secretly look at the counting of the votes in the elections. Over to you, Juan, or should I say, adelante, Juan.
Very impressive, Krishna. Very, very impressive. Speaks Spanish. That was a perfect adelante. And indeed, that's what I'm going to try to do, because boy, we do need some innovation. We need some hope. We need to see that indeed there is a very exciting way forward to this industry. And we've done it yet again with the book. Really, we have looked at the best innovations from what's been a very tough year, or perhaps two very difficult years. Now we're entering a different year, but innovation keeps going. We keep looking at ways to advance our industry. And in this year, we're going to look at innovations of all sorts in business models, product innovation, marketing innovations, journalistic innovations, and so on. So we really have gone through quite a compendium. We're going to look at 13 business models for publishers. As you know, this is a favorite of audiences globally. Every year we add or we subtract business models, new revenue streams that are working, that are not working. We're going to look at paywall models, because the jury seems to be out in terms of what really is working and what isn't working. We're going to look at digital product innovations in newsrooms. This is very, very exciting to see how our digital storytelling is evolving and is changing in very, very engaging ways, and journalistically very powerful, persuasive ways of telling stories in digital. Then we're going to explore again this very, very important question, as many of you start the journey towards subscriptions. What content triggers a subscription? Why do people subscribe? What makes them stay? And indeed, that's often down to the newsroom. We will also talk about how to set up a fact-checking unit within a newsroom. We've looked in the book at best innovations and best case studies, because as you know, and as Krishna mentioned, at a time of pandemics and wars and constant surprises, there's so much misinformation, so much disinformation. So our role as fact checkers is really, really valued. And people love the fact that we're doing this on a consistent basis with independence, with rigor. So you must set up a unit, a fact-checking unit. How do you do it? And finally, I look at best marketing campaigns to convince readers to pay for news. And we've seen a huge amount of innovation and investment on that front. Right, so let me get started with monetization and the business models that we review every single year. As you know, revenue diversification is essential beyond subscriptions. We will focus on subscriptions a lot today, but you really have to experiment. You have to have 3 or 4 of these business models going at the same time. And they are the publisher as the paid content publisher. The publisher is a creative advertiser. And here, if you look at that graphic, we break it down. This is a B2B play. This is the income potential. These are the transaction costs. And this is the profit potential you may get out of it. We explain the requirements and we explain some of the risks of going into each one of these business models. Third, the publisher is a data miner. What does that mean? Have a look in the book. The publisher as a philanthropist, the publisher as the organizer of a club, the publisher as an IT provider, something that has tremendous potential in a country like India, where you really are leading the world when it comes to technology, digital technology. The publisher is an educator, the publisher is an event organizer, but not as we knew before, because now we've got hybrid events. How do you profit with hybrid events? In the book, we talk about that. The publisher is an archivist, selling nostalgia, remarketing a lot of its library content. It's become a big business. The publisher is a brand licensor. The publisher is an ad agency. The publisher is an affiliate marketeer. This is very exciting. Again, we've seen now some of the big publishers getting into this game with big returns. And the publisher is a retailer at all levels, whether it's e-commerce or whether it's brick and mortar. So there's never been a better time, however, to be in the subscription business. This, from all these, remains the one that you have to explore no matter what. We do believe that free journalism, the free model, it's a very expensive model. It's not sustainable. And if indeed your journalism is good, there's really no reason why you should not be able to find someone or some way to charge for that journalism. So there's never been a better time to be in the subscription business, not just in the West, but in India. In the last 2 to 3 years, we've launched dozens of paywalls all over the world, from Mexico to Brazil to Kenya to South Africa. At the end of 2021, publishers ended with a whopping 58% more subscribers than they had a year previously. So this is indeed taking off just globally in every single continent. And we have had the purpose and the focus on getting to that 40% of your digital subscription revenue coming from subscriptions. And we've seen a lot of publishers achieving that. So this can become a reality, and you can do it through a premium model. You could do it through a hybrid model, a metered model. And this idea that, oh, well, but if I go into subscriptions, I'm going to lose my advertising revenue. Look, this is a false dichotomy. Ads versus subs do not equate both as mutually exclusive concepts. You can have both, provided that you have a good reader revenue base to begin with. But plenty of cases where not only is not a dichotomy that we've sort of set up in our minds because of where we come from, but also you can charge even more for your advertising revenue. So change or die, charge or die. Essential that we look at it in those terms. In terms of paywalls, let's have a look at that, because this is a very important chapter. And really, when it comes to paywalls, the key question is your strategy built for acquisition or for retention? And I think the key now is to try to get the balance right, because believe it or not, getting to that acquisition dynamic, getting people to pay, is not proving to be that difficult. you will find a market for your journalism. The problem is now retention. Because obviously there was the urgency of a pandemic. People were looking for news. People were subscribing en masse. How do you retain them? The old models of hard meter paywalls, really, they're moving into dynamic or predictive models. And what we've done is we've tried to evaluate the paywall type. And as you can see, these are the paywalls based on acquisition or retention. And if you go throughout, really, you see that the dynamic predictive paywall here, that seems to score the highest, 4 stars for acquisition and 4 stars for retention. And we believe that that's where you should focus on. In the book, we talk about what does that mean? What is a dynamic predictive paywall? As it seems to show that is the best for acquisition and retention. Personalization, this has also become key. There's really an increasing realization that really one size does not fit all. You really have to personalize the onboarding experience, getting people to come on your site and develop a relationship with them and for them to pay on an ongoing basis. So personalization, how do you do that? So it's the right amount of personalization to indeed begin the journey towards subscription. And we have a wonderful example. Everybody's talking about AI, artificial intelligence, how this works. Well, here's a really, really brilliant application of that. It comes from the Globe and Mail in Canada. It's called Sophie.io. And this really predicts exactly the behavior and preferences for people to indeed get to the subscription level. So at the moment, this is really the global standard in terms of artificial intelligence playing a key role to predict user behavior and preferences and helping a publisher understand how you charge people and how much you charge them. Let's talk about e-commerce, because this is a very interesting revenue stream to explore. And we've seen that the percentage of retail done on digital obviously has been going up. It went up 1% each year leading up to 2020. And in 2020, it was at 18%. So we had 8 weeks, really. In 8 weeks, it went up to 28%. So this has really taken off. People's barriers to buying things on digital channels as a result of the pandemic have dropped completely. We've had a decade in 8 weeks. So capitalize on this, and because indeed your readers, your users, your visitors are more than willing to indeed engage in e-commerce. And some 2 great examples: BuzzFeed Shopping. BuzzFeed, a digital pure player that is having difficulties thriving and really has had some difficulties, has found success with this channel. And of course, the New York Times with Wirecutter, an affiliate revenue model with recommendations, has also been doing fairly well with its e-commerce play. Hearst in the UK, very interesting. E-commerce grew 322% in the second quarter of 2021. A New York Magazine shopping site, The Strategist, has increased at 85%. Again, in terms of e-commerce, and Marie Claire as well, huge amounts of growth in revenue in 2021, equaling all of the revenue in 2020. So these are scattered examples, but I'm sure India will prove to be the same. And when it comes to e-commerce, you do have an edge because you have that organic traffic returning over and over again. It's much more difficult than the discovery way that other e-commerce players have to get people to potentially buy. They have to advertise in lots of social media and so on. You've got that captive audience. You have to really focus on that and capitalize on it. And of course, it's all about trust, right? So if you have that trust with editors, as the Wirecutter has of the New York Times, it's very easy to leverage that brand and capitalize on consumers directly when inspiration strikes. We've seen a 3 to 5 times increase in profits compared to affiliate programs for the same products. So this is Tipsa, the founder and CTO of Tipsa, which is an e-commerce platform for publishers. So indeed, when it comes to this particular application, e-commerce does have an edge over affiliate revenues in some cases. E-learning, let's talk about this because the margins are phenomenal. They can get up to 70%. And we're seeing publishers really doing very well also as a result of the pandemic and beyond. So this is a high margin profit for publishers, both B2B and B2C. This is not just a professional publisher giving advice and learnings to another professional audience, but this is about consumers out there. And indeed, high margins. And the wonderful thing about e-learning at the moment is that you've got lots of companies that basically give you the whole thing, it's ready to go, right? Is turnkey. So you have all these platforms, Yellow Brick, Coursera, Thought Industries, LinkedIn Learning. As a publisher, you can just adapt them. They do take a percentage, but the technology is there for you to be able to offer a good e-learning experience. So not huge amounts of investment, yeah. Some examples, this is brilliant. Sneaker Essentials, really partnering with the Fashion Institute of Technology to offer those learning lessons. Streetwear Essentials, they did partner with the Parsons School of Designs to teach about streetwear essentials. How do you design them? What is the logic? How do you hit those? Some of these streetwear essentials can become billion-dollar industries. So there's a lot of people interested in learning about how they get into this business and so on. A wonderful one, Billboard Magazine and New York University coming together with a course on how to make music for a young audience. So again, these are platforms you can take from online and create very profitable, high margin side businesses. The Guardian is doing this. This is a factory. This is perhaps the world's biggest producer of e-learning courses of all sorts. The business has been going for a while, doing very well. But now we're seeing new players coming. Burda, as you know, is a huge magazine group in Europe, and they've launched an academy on how to create beautiful stylish garments and so on. And the famous Condé Nast School of Fashion, again, developing a very profitable e-learning business. Let's talk about what content triggers a subscription, because this is an important discussion to have. And reliable and accurate science reporting, this has been one of the most valuable commodities during the pandemic, right? Everybody has recognized that we have to present complex issues through data in very compelling ways. So data visualization has become really the way to tell the story of COVID-19. And this became a major driver for subscriptions. People for the first time understood the value of our journalism in digesting a very complex story through good storytelling. However, we've seen pop-up newsletters also to be very versatile in the publisher's arsenal for you to get that subscription going. Live blogs as well, with instant analysis, not just live blogs with updates, but with instant analysis incorporated into them. They've been important mediums to convey information and convert subscribers. The performance of a live blog has been extraordinary. It's been a conversion monster. When people can basically see that you as a publisher can do the same thing that CNN or a 24-hour news channel can do by switching on the television with the same speed and with the same accuracy, this is a great discovery for many publishers. Live updates. And live streaming of local sports. This has been a very interesting niche. A lot of people saying that they are really becoming dedicated subscribers as a result of second, third tier division sports being streamed locally via your news website. In your country, obviously, with cricket, this would apply to small leagues, town leagues, this play being done in Europe, where somebody is live streaming third division football matches. Then there is podcasting. This has been a very interesting moment. It really is the golden days of podcasting. But that momentum now seems unstoppable, and also because it's making money. Yeah, podcast advertising has not just recovered, but it has grown massively. We've seen the numbers of podcast advertisers growing 42% globally. And we've seen that it's not just advertising revenue that is projected to grow healthily, but is now a new source of revenue. People paying to subscribe to podcasts. The same way they pay for Netflix, they're more than willing now to pay for a good podcast. In the past, it was a ad-dependent business model. Now, indeed, is something that can lead to incredible revenue if you get the right product, right? Almost 4 in 10 Australians, they would pay for a podcast, they told us. 38% in the US, in Canada, 37%, the UK, Sweden, more than 20% of people saying, yeah, I'll pay for a podcast, which of course can also be sponsored and have advertising. 20% of listeners who've never paid really say, yeah, I'm more likely now to pay for a podcast. Why? Because podcasts are fast growing, relatively inexpensive to produce, extremely effective, lucrative when it comes to revenue sources and proven subscription drivers. And this podcast boom has given birth to a very interesting innovation here called the audio story boom. And this is a very interesting evolution of podcast. So research basically has shown that users want to stay informed, but they're busy. So they appreciate the option to just listen to the story. This is no longer just a podcast, but it's a story that you've written. They just listen to that version of the story. People throughout the pandemic, they've been grown used to putting their ear pods on, and while they're cooking dinner, running errands, or exercising, they want to listen to stories, stories that you may have written. And we've seen here the emergence. This is a great innovator. This is Zetland, and you could describe this as the world's first audio-first news publisher. So these people went from offering just a few of their stories as audio to really more than 80% of its content now is audio stories. Audio articles for them tend to be listened all the way through, in vast contrast to text articles. And really, once you commit to listening, very few people drop off. And then you need to make a choice if you get into the business of audio. You have 2 choices. You could do this with technology, with artificial intelligence and automated tools to convert stories to audio, basically computer-generated voices read your story to the audience, or you can use professional voice actors or the authors of the stories to read them. So this is a choice to be made. So let me take you through 2 different publishers and their experience. Technology, why do it? Well, it's lower cost. It's a greater number of audio stories that you can produce. The AI solutions for audio conversion of print stories, they're not too expensive, and they're fairly easy to incorporate into your website. Text-to-voice technology advancements are very, very good. You can choose the kind of voice you want. This is an authoritative voice. If there's a feature story, this is more of a light voice, or this is a grave voice if you're telling a story that is worrisome, like war reporting and so on. You can choose local accents, and you can, again, as I said, choose voices in different moods. So technology gives you this, right? The Washington Post has basically gone for volume, and they've said, we're going to do this through technology, of course, owned by Amazon. So they have tremendous engineers that can make this happen in a jiffy, right? So they said, look, we just want to give our readers always the option to listen to the story. So if you look at the design of the Washington Post now, you almost every story you have, okay, read it or listen to it. And they want to give that option, and they want to have that predictability. Obviously, you can't do this with just humans. You need technology to support this, yes? And for them, it's because they spend much more time listening than they would otherwise. The New York Times, however, has chosen to go a different route. They're going for talent, for human beings. They prefer really quality rather than quantity, and they really are not keen on computer-sounding voices. When it comes to Zetland, they try using professional voice actors, but it sounded too perfect. So finally, they went for a human product. So in their case, is the voice of the journalist that does it. So voice stories, something for you to explore, because it's a boom business and very, very exciting. And indeed, creates a lot of retention and is a natural evolution of the podcast. A great innovation here we've seen come really to its booming times in the last year or so.
Can I just interrupt to,
Of course,
let you know that we need to wrap up in a few minutes, but if you can take a few questions after this, yes?
Absolutely.
Just a couple of more minutes, maybe.
Sure.
Please.
So I'm going to talk about fact-checking newsrooms. How do you set up a perfect unit? Yes. So because a pandemic without journalism unthinkable. So our role as fact-checkers has become very, very important. And so newsrooms really have to invest in this. And we've looked at this in detail, and we're showing you some good examples, a very good case study of a global, have a look at fake or fact, how they've done it. Technology. We've looked at the 15 best digital product innovations. Have a look in the book. But indeed, you do have to, for the first time, get your product team and your journalism team to work together to develop some of these stories that we've highlighted for you in the book. Graphical story editor, a new digital narrative from the BBC. Article recommendation through AI from the New York Times. We've also seen Bergens Tidende with automation to write real estate stories, and Posten with fully automated print layouts. And mobile apps, we've seen phenomenal innovation with a personal assistant from FAZ, Nikkei with a Wave experimental app, a very interesting digital innovation there for you to look at in terms of storytelling. And finally, how to sell your journalism. We are looking at the best news marketing campaigns, really. We've seen some phenomenal examples for you to evaluate. New Zealand Headspace, very compelling campaign. The South China Morning Post with its campaign, with journalism, the questions that exposes. The Financial Times Letters to this New World, a wonderful campaign for you to evaluate the Morgan kaleidoscope, the different aspects of this world we live in. And look, just to conclude, we've been selling the wrong thing. We should stop selling ads. It's time to start selling our journalism. Because people are willing to buy that journalism. This is the moment to invest in newsrooms. This is the moment to invest in journalism and to sell it confidently. And I hope in the book you find perfect and very, very good examples applicable to your reality to make this indeed a reality in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juan Señor. You didn't mention, as you always do, the last line, which is, where do we pick up this book? How is it available? In what ways can we subscribe?
Yes, if you remember WAN-IFRA, if you're part of this session today, you will get a copy of the book. If you want to buy the book in additional copies, you have to buy it through our website or through WAN-IFRA. And if you want a copy of the presentation, send me an email. And my email is senor@innovation.media. Senor, S-E-N-O-R, @innovation.media. And I'll be happy to send you a copy of the presentation, and the book will be sent to you by WAN-IFRA. But happy to share.
Super. We have 5 minutes to go. Can I just pose a set of quick rapid fire questions, a couple of them which have come in from the audience? And if you can just quickly run through them. Let me run through these audience questions first. Here's a question asking whether this e-commerce bump, which we've seen in the last few months, was it largely pandemic driven, and could it just be a very short-term thing, you think?
Yes, very much pandemic driven, but we should not dismiss the fact that because it happened during the pandemic is not going to continue to happen. The difference this time around is there's been a very long pandemic, so the habit has been formed. If it had only happened for a month, then what could argue is like, well, yeah, that only happened during that pandemic, so it's over. We should not invest in it. No, people have changed their habits because they've been doing it for a long time. So it's staying.
Yeah, great. Let me come to a few personal questions because I can't see too many up on the chat box. What are the standout India examples you've seen in this past year, say? I mean, let's not hear the same names or the same models, but have you seen any standout examples from India in the ways in which publishers have been able to crack this egg a little better?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of technology, we're seeing India beginning to emerge as a very savvy player in terms of the quality of the digital experience that you have, some of the article recommendations, some of the stickiness of your websites and so on. I think one can confidently say that India is very, very competent now at creating massive audiences, digital first audiences. Where you have to really begin to make the transition is to digital subscriptions. And I think, you are primed for that. You are ready to begin to capitalize in the success of your digital engagement. So you need to begin this journey, and you will be very surprised how much of an audience you can discover out there. Why? Because a lot of your objective readers are already paying for digital experiences. They're paying for Netflix, they're paying for Prime Video, they're paying for products on Amazon, they're paying for music on Spotify. So the argument in the past that Indian readers do not transact digitally, commercially with digital interfaces is not true. They're spending money on digital. So there's no reason why you should not be able to begin to charge for your journalism digitally.
If I heard you right, you said this is the best time for subscriptions. And I think that would be music to the ears of many of the people in this audience and elsewhere. But I also saw just the other day, in fact, yesterday, one of India's top editors complained that she subscribes to 24 news organizations, and she wonders how many more should she subscribe to if this is the model of the future. And correlated to that is a question I see in the chat box. If this becomes the norm, could knowledge and information eventually become a privilege of the rich, is the question someone is asking. But the two questions are not very dissimilar.
Yeah, Krishna, this is a very interesting discussion. And obviously it's a philosophical discussion, is an academic discussion to a certain degree, but it's also a democratic discussion that should concern any editor. The divergence between the truth being behind a paywall and lies, misinformation being now available for free globally. And it's something that concerns us. But Krishna, if you look at the history of journalism, that's the way it used to be, right? So, when the Times of India started, when the Hindu started, when all your wonderful news brands started in India, you had to buy a newspaper and you had to pay for it. And if you wanted to not be informed, you just listened to people in the street that sometimes misled you or sometimes gave you fake information or incomplete information. So the idea that you have to pay for quality, contrasted, independently produced journalism is not new, but it is true. So that's why we advocate a freemium model. And if you look at the experience of publishers at the moment, when it comes to this critical role that we play in a democracy, for instance, the Financial Times, during the war here in Europe, all their content regarding Ukraine, they're giving it for free. So when you have a social duty to inform, at a time of war, at a time of a pandemic, it makes business sense to drop that paywall. And it can be done in one click.
Okay, one last question, and one word is the answer I require from you. The New York Times has bought Wordle.
Yes.
Would you recommend Indian publishers to try something like that in terms of a lateral linkage?
Sure,
Yes or no?
absolutely. Yes.
Super.
Absolutely.
Super. Juan, Señor, thank you very much for this, the Innovation in Newspapers report, Innovation in News Media report of this year. And thank you very much, all of you, for joining us, and I'll see you soon in the next session. Thank you very much.